Lord, I just ask you to give the girls the strength to share their 3 weeks away with us and to look after them and to make you do, let them do what you need them to do, Lord. And also, I want to pray for Esther on tomorrow as she goes to start a new job. Give her peace and go before her. Amen.
Fabulous. It's a bit of a strange one to come and say. Talk about what we've done. There's so much that we've done. It's hard to kind of put it in words and to share. So there's also, if you want to ask us questions, feel free to ask us questions as well. Because I kind of said to Sheila and Deb, what is it that you actually want to know? Because it's one of those that we could share about Kenya and we could say about what we've done, but we might not talk about what actually you want to hear from us either. So we're going to share some pictures, share some of the lives of the people that we've met, some of what we've done, and a bit about what God's done in us as well. So hopefully it'll make a bit of sense. Hopefully you'll get some of capture some of what we've done, and maybe Josh might even come and join us at the front, or he might more likely join people at the back than the front. To be fair, where he's going. These are the children at one of the churches. You might work out that the church is actually in a field. They haven't got a church building. They've got a church tent. Do
you working?
No. Who needs a church building, eh? Anyone? So, this is one of the orphanages that the church has set up that has been running. Where's my phone? Got all the information on my phone. Do you like the skirt, by the way? Yeah. It's a gift. I might need some help. Sheila, do you want to come and get one end? Liam, do you want to come and get the other end? You hold that end of the skirt. It's a bit big, isn't it? It's heavy. Try going to a toilet in Kenya with a skirt like this on. It's not easy. For those who want to know about my arm, it didn't really hurt. We just wanted a bit of a story. Esther wanted a bit of a story, and I was just like, people are a bit more worried about it than they really need to be. It's my arm's absolutely fine. Yeah. It's quite a scar, yeah. It doesn't hurt. Never did. So this is an orphanage that the church set up, and it's actually set up in the land of one of the leaders' homes. So they've got land as a family. So they set it up here in a place called Kitale, it was about an hour and a half drive from where we were staying. And they set it up, what time of year? 2005, and they've got 45 children that live there. And these are some of the wonderful children that live there. Some of the children aren't there full time, some of them have got guardians, so they go there to their guardians some of the time and then come back when school's on. So they've got a school that's also on site for the village in Kitale. So what we've done, people in the church have been really, really generous and kind. So we've given them a gift to the orphanage to buy all the children a new set of clothes each. So all the 45 children will have a new set of clothes. They don't have much money in the orphanage, and the orphanage sadly is one of the things where they're struggling financially in all the work that they do. It costs about £30 a month
Per child.
to feed them, educate them, clothe them, care for them. This little lad in the middle, my mind's gone blank, isn't it? Nikki, that's it. Nikki's got special needs, as you can probably tell, but he's full of joy, absolute joy. Can't speak, but he's real joy. In Kenya, as in some other places, if you've got special needs or anything like that, sometimes found that it's a demonic thing, or that you're a curse, or that actually you're not going to bring in any money to the family because you're not going to be able to get a job. So Nikki was took into the orphanage, but due to it not being a normal thing in some ways to have people with special needs within the orphanage or within the school context normally, they're not very well equipped to look after children with special needs, but they want to learn. So it's the start of the journey of working with them, but it was an absolute joy to spend time with these kids, and they loved having lollipops. Just generally playing with them. We played Duck Duck Goose, which was quite interesting, being as they speak Swahili and don't speak English, and me and Esther tried to explain it to them in English. Anyone ever tried to explain a game in English to children who speak Swahili? No, not very easy. So instead, I played a little game with them, which is on the next thing. Must have played that with them for about 10 minutes, and it was the biggest joy of their life. And it was my biggest joy. Absolutely loved it. I asked them to do some dancing, and they just danced at me. And then so I decided to do that to them, which I found even funnier. But absolute joy and a treasure to spend time in the orphanage. And it's something that actually all that we talk about today and the connections that we've had in Kenya, where we went, are all things that we could go, actually, there's a role for different people in the church that we could go, this is somewhere that maybe you could serve and spend 2 weeks, or maybe you could go, maybe I want to move there one day and work there. And the orphanage is one of those places that playing with these kids, doing some painting and decorating around there and just giving is one of those. Teaching special needs, I've already talked to Wendy about it. Learning how to work with children with special needs is a key thing. I don't know what's on the next slide. Do you want to speak about this, Ines? So this is the Buye Compel football team. They started the football team 19 years ago, and it was Vic had taken out a load of footballs and given them to each village that there's a church and said, set up a football team, but the rules are the pastor has to play football, and also it's not just for the church, it's to invite Muslims, is the other predominant religion there. So they've been doing it for 19 years, and this is the football team. They've got a few football teams because there's so many people. So they've got a junior one, college one, senior one. I think there was about 5 football teams that we prayed for. They've also got 5 coaches, a media specialist, 3 doctors and nurses, a pastoral team. Like, it's church. It was a church meeting that we did with these guys. All the fans were there, supposedly. They've also got a Facebook page. But 90% of those guys there were Muslims. Became Christians through playing football. It's just a miracle that just ways that are so simple. All the heart of the churches that you'll see is it's how do we reach people? How can we make a difference? How can we sow seeds? And we were telling stories, but we felt small in comparison to what they've been doing because it's just amazing. These two guys at the bottom, you may see them one day. One's going to be playing for Sweden and one's going to be playing for France. Gigs and Green. Gigsy's in Green. His parents named him Gigsy, as you do. But God is going to take these people to nations and they know Jesus and they're going to carry on doing and learning what they've learned. And it's just a real honour to be with them and just admire what they've been doing, but they're just desperate for God to do something in their lives. Each one of them wanted prayer. Each one of them just wanted to be part of what they're doing. So part of what they do for part of the church football team is they say you have to come to church for the prayer before each match. And then also, whenever they've got training, they do a Bible study and a song. So they're learning about Jesus all the time. It is a church, it's a cell group, isn't it? And God moves, and they're just ready for more people to join it. The guy at the top in the blue and white stripes is the coach, and Eric is the bishop. They call him Bishop Eric. We just call him Eric. Yeah, that's why he's a bishop. So he picks out Moses, I think his name is, and said, "Can you be a coach and coach our football team?" He was a Muslim guy, picked him out to be a coach, coached the team. He became a Christian, was baptised 3 years ago. They're paying for him to do proper coaching, football coaching thing. His wife, Vivian, got baptised 2 years ago, and I spent a lot of time with her and their 3 children. And it's just incredible to see their lives transformed because he was noticed and became part of it. It's great. This is a story, and like the first picture is not the person, but it's just to give a illustrative thing. So as you're driving down the streets in Kenya, you'd see people, kids on the road with their animals, not always with an adult. Sometimes they'd be by themselves. And it could be with a goat or a sheep or a cows. And about 20 years ago, there was a little boy called Moses who had a couple of goats walking down the road. He was 7 at the time, and he had fallen out with his parents. His mum later died, and he wanted to kill himself at 7. That was the end of his life. He'd fed up with life, had no reason to live. And Eric and Rose saw him walking along the road with his goats and saw that he was down and in the dumps and took him into their home. And they kept him in their house. After a couple of years, they got him to have contact with his dad, and he built a relationship and forgave his dad, but still stayed with Eric and Rose. They put him through school, put him through college, put him through university, and as a church, we're paying for him to be a surgeon. And he's got about 2 years left of being a surgeon. And that's him there. Moses. That's not him with a sheep, that's just to give you an idea of what he could have looked like. That's him in there, in the blue, and there he is at the top as a doctor. He's already a medical officer, and now he's specialising as a surgeon. His lives changed and transformed because they picked him out and saw him. And as a church, and as people of God, even all these miles away, have invested into his life. His life's changed. And we've met him. These are just to give you an example of a bit of life of people we've met and people along the way, of church leaders that we've spent time with, just so you've got pictures, see what we've done. I need to see is on this one. This photo in the middle. So on the, I don't know what day it was, near the end of the trip, we were going on our longest drive, which was 3 hours there and 3 hours back, to a place called Busia, which is on the border near to Uganda, to go to a church, which was great, and we had a great time. And when we got to the church, they said, there's a lady in the church whose
Husband's
died,
mother-in-law,
brother-in-law, and mum's died. They've buried the two, and they're still to bury the mum. Can you go and visit? Which is one of those, yeah, we'll go and visit. What do you do? Like, obviously, we'll go and visit and do our bit. And we went and visited. They gave us food, and that's us outside with the family. They wanted photos of us together, just as they've kept photos as well, just as a memory of we were there and part of it. This little girl is in Busia, and I forgot her name, you prayed for her, didn't you?
yeah, I can't remember.
There's so many people, and she'll travel 3 hours to go to the school in Busia, and she'll stay there, so they will stay and be boarded in Busia away from family, which is quite normal. And the boat in the top is the river you cross to go to Uganda. We were offered many times just to get on a boat and go to Uganda. We're like, no, it's okay. Like, it's only a short hop ride. No, that's okay. We want to go back to England. We would go to Uganda, but this is just a picture to show the energy and the love that the kids have got for Jesus and for church, that they will do anything to be with God and around people who want to share about Jesus. And there's such a love and a hunger for God. The bottom two pictures of the Sunday school classes in the main church in Webuye, where the big church is based. And then the top three pictures are from the one in the field. It was tipping it down with rain that day, absolutely tipping. It was like you walking through sand and mud. Yeah, they still were there and were willing to be there and do anything just to be in the presence of God. I love this guy. So early this year, Paddington at the top was attacked as he did a funeral for one of his family members. They got machetes, sliced both of his arms. His son was there, got attacked. Lots of people got attacked. There was a little girl there who got raped at the same time. And all because they were desperate for some food that they were having at the funeral. The desperation of people is so high. But we prayed and we supported Hamilton to get surgery earlier this year. And on our first day, we met him. You can see he's got only one hand in the cast. And actually he's only got damage now to one finger, which he can't move. So miraculously, from that first picture, it's just amazing. But also, he came with us. We've never met him before. Came with us every day to every church. He heard what we taught. He then went home, told his wife what he'd learnt. And then they've already started to go and visit people in their neighbourhood, go house to house, telling them about Jesus, doing good, praying for them. And they just want to see God move in their area. They're just desperate. And they just love Jesus. And you can see that God's going to do so much through those two guys. They were like, oh, we've only got 18 people in our church. And I was like, but you know so many more people, and it's going to make such a difference. So carry on praying for Hannington.
The school.
The school. We went to a school in Wabuya, which is near the church. They have 400 primary school in the primary school. They're just building a high school for another 400 children. These girls, I must have took 6 photos at least of them until they got the right photo that they wanted. But each one of them has a story. Brenda, who I got to know the most, with the short hair.
It's a story later.
I'll tell it now. She was born out of incest, and the chief of her village and her parents, their trajectory of her life is death. She would not, they'd kill her because it's the shame and the just who you are, you're not going to be anything. But someone had compassion, like Jesus, and took her into this school. She's now 15 years old. She's highly educated. She wants to be a judge, and she just loves Jesus. And she's, every time she saw me or Sarah, she'd run up and give us a hug, and she just was so excited. We've given her a devotion book to do, but the same goes for the other 4 children, girls next to her. They've all got those stories similar, where they're, what should have happened to them should have been death. But actually, what's going to happen? We've got 1 potential lecturer, 1 surgeon, and 2 nurses, and a judge in that photo. And that's what they want to do with their life. They don't see what they were born into as the definition of who they are and who they're going to be, because God rewrote their story. And that's what amazed me about every person we met, was actually it's not about who we were born into, what we were born into, because otherwise all of us could have, oh, we're never going to get anywhere. But they took on what God said about them, which is what's key. At the bottom is a little boy called Baraka. Blessing. We've got a blessing in this church, haven't we? Baraka. Baraka, they don't know how old he is. He was left on Rose and Eric's doorstep a couple of years ago. Nothing to him at all. Lots of disabilities that the doctors couldn't diagnose when they came to live with them because he was so malnourished. They said he needs to get better first before they can even test his hearing, test his developmental delay, all of this. He just smiles and beams. And the thing you hear about Eric and Rose on the first day we were there, we're like, how many children have you got? And she was like, I was like, how many birth children have you got? She went, I've got 5 birth children, but I can't count how many children. He now lives with them. I don't think they've ever had an empty home, even though their children are older, because they see the need and just do it. They said if you take a child like that to the police station, the police will go, well, you've got him, you keep him, or do whatever you want with him. But they just absorb people. Can't even see. And the school's at the top. It's a really nice school, and they're building a high school as well, having computer labs, science labs. And last year, I think the government got rid of all the books, the curriculum, and said you need new books, otherwise the school will break down. We raised that money in church, so the school's thriving and doing really well, and they can build a high school. Next one. So this is something that they've recently set up. It's a mother, like a daycare centre in the local area, and they set it up because people couldn't leave their children with anybody else. So they were finding within the area, because it's so close to Uganda, kids were being trafficked as babies to Uganda, or exploited, or all things happening to them. So Rose, as she does, thinks of all these ideas and thinks, where's the gap? And set up a day care centre in February. I think they've got over 40 kids going because it's a safe place. They were learning about Moses that day we went. That's a place where Sarah held the little girl, and she looked like she wouldn't let go of Sarah, would she? But they just, and they also, because locally there's a lot of teenage pregnancies, so they can't go and tell, some of them can't even tell their parents that they've got a child. So they live away, drop the kid there, go to college, so that they can show their parents they're doing something. But they've got kids that are now being looked after while they can study. And that just the opportunity again to how we reach out to the people most in need, pray for people. So that was a really good place. So this is some of the churches. You've got occupied guards behind. Just because it buzzes when that's not playing anything. So this church, we walked in the building that was too small for us, so we walked out, and then it absolutely poured down with rain, so we all had to run back in the smallest tinkers ever. But just their welcome and everything. Is it playing video? So every time we went to one of the village churches, we got that welcome. It was just like, I think it's something like we bestow on you roses and flowers, someone told me. Sophie's looking at me blank. Patricia, there's no point asking Patricia because she doesn't understand Swahili. And it's just, they just welcome people, and their worship, especially, the worship's just amazing. I don't think the worship one plays, does it? Oh, yeah, it does. Their worship and love for God was just so evident.
They were the main church.
Yeah, so we visited that top church, and they were the ones that then planted out 6 more churches.
No,
5 more churches. This is one of them. The one in the tent is another.
So it's on the next one.
Another in a field. This was just a field. And like, there's nothing anywhere near any of these places. So to get to church, they'd walk like at least a mile, some further, to get to a church. And that, for me, was just like, we're desperate. When we sang that song earlier about we want to move, there's something that has to happen for that to happen. And these people were so desperate for God to come, to learn, to take in. It just was mind-blowing that how this is what they depend on. We have it so easy here, because we're like, we don't need church, we don't need God, we can do stuff on ourselves. But every person was just like, without God, nothing, everything was about God.
Did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
What is the protection like for the church? That do they mean it being protection
No, it's a safe place. Yeah, very acceptable as Christians. Literally in the town, if you drive down the street, it'll be house, a house, a church, a house, a church, a house, a church. There's so many churches, but it doesn't mean that active churches, and it's hard to see how many people, but there is a high percentage of Muslims in each of these areas, but also the occult and demonic as well.
Is there a lot of trafficking children there where they are as well?
Yeah, because it's a rural village, so the drugs, the crime, all of those things are happening here. So these are some of the church plant. Oh, this is the next one. So they've set up a farm at the top. Those two end pictures are a farm that they set up in order to provide income, in order to provide money to pay for children in the orphanages. So they don't just wait for people to give them money. They're thinking outside the box. What can we do? So with some of the money, we bought an egg incubator to have chickens. So they have chickens and they sell eggs. But if they sold a chick, they would get like 6 times the amount of money.
And quicker.
And so for them, it was just like, wow, massive blessing of what God's going to do. And just thinking outside the box. And these women here, so it's a microfinancing thing. So they don't have money. So they have a pot, which they borrow from and then have to pay back with interest. But it isn't allowed all of these women, and they have about 4 other groups that meet every month to be able to set up business, because they don't get benefits, they don't get anything else, so it's got to think of ways to do it. So one of the ladies here, she sells maize and corn. Another one has built creative marquees and tents that she rents. Then you've got people who sew clothes and people who sell second-hand clothes. Just whatever they can do. People creative and think in order to provide. Because if they didn't get any money, that means no food. Literally, they're living like that. But none of them were sad or upset about it. They're just like, oh, let's do this. And they're really creative and open about their finances and where they're struggling. Next slide, Sarah. So on the end is Eric and Rose. So they lead the 72 churches. They are also got churches in Tanzania and Uganda and a few other places. They're just so down to earth and just all about Jesus and all about people. And this is Josephine, who was our interpreter for the 3 weeks we were there. And like I said, when I was sharing some of the stuff about who are you on God, and some of the experiences that people I've worked with have had, my mental health, she felt she was telling her story as she spoke. She's had 3 marriages, all failed. She's got alopecia from stress. She's had lots of sickness throughout her life, lots of abuse that she's experienced, but she continues to follow after Jesus. And her son led worship one of the days at church, and he was just like so on fire for God. It was so good to see that she wasn't determined by who she was, her background. A real blessing to us. So this is the church in Mabuye. So it's a massive church. And they were full of life, full of joy, and there's church services going on. I'm tired. I joined them today on Facebook Live, and they still go on a long time, even when it's not fit preaching. So it's not just fit to preach. Me and Esther were asked to do talks for their church, youth and children's. So we ended up I did 4 meetings one day. Ridiculous amounts. How did it go, Julie? I needed all the prayer I could get, and more. We are so blessed here, and that church was such a blessing, and it was wonderful. But as a head, and we've got so much to give, and they've got so much to give, and we're blessed in different ways. And some of the stuff that we need to grow in, they've got, and vice versa. But it was just quite funny. On Sunday just gone, thankfully, all the youth turned up into one group rather than having to do it twice. And I did Esther's talk on the 4 friends, about let's be the 4 friends that carry people to Jesus. And they all looked at me dumbfounded. And these are people who've been in church probably their whole lives. And so when we talk about youth, we talk about from like 12 up until about 25, so until they're married probably. So it's not young people like what we class as youth, as those in school. And I was talking to him about it, and it took ages of like, how must it feel to feel like you need help? And I got to one question, and I was just like, oh. And I asked one thing, and then I realised I hit something that God must be saying. And I was like, who here's ever loved someone that's upset you, or ever done something nice back to someone who's upset you? And they all looked at me funny. I said, right, stand up then. Let's try it now, actually. All of you here, stand up if you've ever done something nice to someone who's upset you. Okay, now imagine that only 4 of you stood up. That's all I got. You can sit down. And that included one of the youth leaders didn't stand up. And I said, okay, now, if you've prayed for someone who's not being kind to you, and the youth leader still didn't stand up, I was like, come on, let me read it in the Bible. And I read it out of the Bible. I said, this is something that Jesus told us to do. And I've got one more person to stand up. And there's about as many youth as there are you guys here. And so some of the stuff is like how wonderful they are in some stuff. There's some stuff that lacks. And it's vice versa, isn't it? Like, some of the stuff and the richness of what they've got is amazing, but actually we lack in this, like we lack in that stuff. So it was hard work, and it was hard to sing in Swahili when the words weren't even on there. Well, how can you sing a song in Swahili when there's no words to even follow? Just put my hands in the air. But no, it's a vibrant church and full of love, and you have to go around and shake everyone's hand all the time, which is great. Back to you, Esther.
This is Brenda again, but she said ahead, and that was on our last Sunday where she made us bracelets with our name in. But I put this picture on the other side. It's the water. We got a lot of rain for Kenyan summer. And we could have been really miserable about it, but could have still been. But when we found out why it was raining so much, it changes your perspective. So the president of Kenya is now a Christian, and they've been in drought for 4 years in Kenya. And he said, okay, we can't cope with this anymore because the price of food was going up, people dying, crops, they were so dependent on it. So he asked all the church leaders across Kenya to come to a stadium in Nairobi to pray for rain. That was last year. Since then, every other week, they've had enough rain. So when that's your prayer, to save people's lives and to produce crops, and it was actually a massive witness to all the critics who were like, oh, we've got a Christian president. Actually, they could see an answer to prayer. So rivers were like that and bigger the whole time we were there. Even the roads at some points were rivers. Well, it was good because it was an answer to prayer, so can't complain about the rain.
What, did you get lost?
And pray that you didn't get washed away. So this is me preaching at one of the many youth things. And it's a challenge to each one of us. So that picture was Esther's, what God's done to you. This is, I guess, what God's done to me. Being prepared to share. And sometimes we don't get much notice. We literally so we were like, yeah, Vic's going to speak every day. We're going to go to lots of meetings and we've got to share. Oh, that's fine, we can share, we can talk. We didn't take any notes with us. We were like, God will just help us. And he did, thankfully. God was good. And he did help us. There were times when it was really difficult and times when you're just like, what on earth am I going to say? Such as the kids and youth stuff. And I think that was the hardest one in some ways because there were so many different ones over and over again. Literally, it was kids and youth all together. Then you split off, and Esther had the kids, which she was very pleased about. I went, I'll have the kids again. Thanks for the opportunity for letting me have the kids. I'll have the youth then, which was harder. And she knew it.
It was about carrying on the journey.
Not the fact that I had to do it twice. But having to be able to depend on God and be willing to share at different points. And actually, some of it's about being willing to open up about yourself. And we've all got to do this. This isn't just about what he's taught me, but all of us, we've got to be willing to share about ourselves. And I think we didn't realise some of it, of how much it would impact people, I guess. And thanks for those that shared with us your stories to share, because they really did impact people. They were a blessing to those that we shared with. It touched people's lives massively on that last Saturday when we did the Days event. But to have to go, God, I've got nothing to say right now. What do you want me to say? And in the first time we did the youth one, I just realised the time. Yeah. The first time we did the youth one, so we'd done the kids and youth together, and there was no response from the kids because they don't talk Swahili. We realised afterwards, they don't talk English. We realised afterwards, not many of the kids that come are actually Christians, and we thought they were all Christians that come. And then I went out to do the youth group, and then realised that I've got another youth group to do after because they didn't turn up, so I've got to do it all again. And I sat there and done the one, and Josephine's son was doing the interpreting for me, and I was like, he was like, you've got another one now, Sarah. And I was like, oh. I was like, how long have I got for this one, Levi? He's like, you've got about 20 minutes. I was like, okay. And I was looking through my book of notes of things that I jotted down. He was like, you're right. And I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to think of something different so you don't have to hear the same thing again, because otherwise it might get boring for you. I was like, I've got nothing in here though. I've got nothing to share. And they came in and sat down. And I just went, it's lovely to speak. How old are you all? And he asked them, and they worked out they're all between 15 and 16.
And I opened my mouth and went, it's great to see you all. This is with interpretation. So you could only say a few words at a time, which made it fun. Not. Gives it a bit more time for God to speak, which is great. And I went, I just want to tell you about a friend. Who's this friend, God? Literally, that's what I said. Just want to tell you about a friend. And I was like, I don't even know who this friend is yet. I've just told them that I'm going to tell you about a friend, and I don't know who it is. And literally, that's how I started it. And Levi interpreted that bit, and then I told the story. And it was spot on for what God wanted to say. It was age appropriate. It was the same age. And I was talking about how I was at their age and when I got baptised, and how I prayed and talked to a friend who was an atheist, invited her to my baptism, along with about 15 other people from our school. And we shared about Jesus and how over the next 2 years, prayed for her and discipled her, and she became a Christian and still moving on for God all those years later. But it's that dependency on God. God, you need to speak, but being willing to do that. Next one in the middle is just the generosity of people. Just blows me mind every single time I think about this church. Is just the generosity of the amount of stuff that we took from people in this church was phenomenal. And then the gifts that just came in while we were there from the people in the church was phenomenal. It was just incredible to be able to go, we just want to give you this again. Someone else has given us this to give you. Someone sent us some money for you, so you can do this. And they couldn't believe it either. It was just a blessing. And then the end picture is these children. One day I had a migraine and I wasn't going to go on the visits, but we were going to 3 churches, and I'm glad I went. It was wonderful. And it was a village church, and it was just everyone went in through the front entrance. And when you're visiting a church and you're seen as a visitor, you have to sit on the front row, which is lovely, and you're well cared for, and they do everything and look after you really, really well. But I went in through the back entrance because I was walking along with all the kids, just because they were so enthralled by seeing us as we were white. It was just like, hold your hand, pull you around. So I walked in the back with these kids and we were dancing at the back. And the thing that struck me the whole time that we were there is that we can take the time to notice people, and God takes the time to notice us. And sometimes those kids might not have been noticed. There's people along the way that might not have got noticed. And I'm not disrespecting the church or anything like that. But each one of us has the chance to notice people. And it was just a real honour to be able to notice people on the trip and to show people that they were noticed. When we were at the home of the people where the family where people had died, these girls came who wanted photos with us. We took photos with them. Not for any other reason, don't know who they are, they were just some random women in the streets. But they felt noticed. And sometimes that's what people need, is the need to be noticed. And I think that's something that I made sure and tried to do on the trip, was to notice people and show people that were noticed, particularly the kids. And that's something that God taught me, I think, is the importance of showing people that they're noticed and they're seen, because it does really make a difference to them that people are seen and noticed. Any questions from anyone? Julie? Not sure really. Can work it out. There'll be ways. And there'll be times to go over, and times to people want to visit and things like that. There'll be opportunities for sure. No, so what happened was that there was a real opportunity to see